Toby, welcome to Performance Piece.
It is genuinely a pleasure to be here.
Mate, I'm so happy you're here. You're one of the first people I actually ever worked with.
I was thinking about that when you very kindly invited me to be on. Like, I met you when you were 16. Do you remember you came to our old Transgressive office?
Oh my God.
In Holloway Road.
Yes, I do remember that.
And that office was sort of like synonymous in Transgressive history. It was the only one where we had slugs living with us when we signed.
First signings with slugs.
Yeah.
Could be an indie band from then.
Yeah, exactly. And when we signed Foals, they rehearsed there and then slept on the floor there.
Yeah.
But I remember you came in with Benga, your big brother, and it was this wonderful meeting because we've always loved Benga and he knew sort of musicians we were working with. And he goes, "Here's my younger brother Seye. I think he's really talented." And you played some songs for us in the office. I remember it so vividly. And I remember just thinking, in the most, without trying to make it weird and embarrassing for you, but about to do that.
Okay,
I'm
bracing.
I just remember thinking, this guy is so talented and amazing. He is going to be in music for as long as he wants to be.
Oh, come on.
And here we are,
Yeah.
you know, a few years later.
A fair few years later. And that's why you've got the eye. I remember that, speaking of like, people sleeping on the floor, etc. It's just like, you've been such a champion of musicians, from the get-go, like giving whatever you could to like all these unsigned artists and discovering people. Like, where did this love for like just mucking in with musicians come from?
Oh my gosh. It's an interesting way of putting it. I mean, I personally started getting obsessed with music like from a kid's age. You know, I was like I think I was about 7 when I first played a vinyl record, and I was 10 years old when I went to my first gig, and started buying cassettes when I was 8. So like, music's just always been this weird attraction from a young age. And then I started as a music writer and started making my own sort of like bad poetry as a teenager, which is obviously, you know, everyone's sort of formative necessity. And then I then started like kind of blogging and journaling about my experiences and interviewing artists. And
rock feedback.
Yeah, rock feedback, exactly. And so I was 15 when I started that as a music website. And I'm about to actually just go through all the archives of all the old journals and things, because they're not online at the moment, but I'm going to re-upload them in the next year or so.
Wow.
Because it was an amazing time in music. It started in 2000, and I just was very lucky to be like, I guess, like a young teenager at the time. And, you know, when I was 16 doing my GCSEs, like I was interviewing the Strokes on their first tour for Is This It? And
so crazy.
And when they came back with their next record, like I remember sort of calling Ryan Gentles, their manager at the time, and the Strokes had blown up, and they were like, "We're not doing interviews." But then like Albert Hammond Jr. on the tour bus was like, "Is that the Almost Famous kid?" Which I'd become known as, because I was this young weirdo with bad long hair.
Yeah.
And then I ended up doing kind of a Strokes interview on that tour when no one else was able to be around them. And I look back at this now, like a long time on, and I just feel so grateful to have been, you know, exposed at that point to a lot of brilliant weirdos. You know, I was a weirdo, and I got on with weirdos.
That's what makes you different from, say, other music execs, is that you've always been a champion of musicians and you've been a friend of musicians. I think first that has been the case for me. That's been my experience of you. And now obviously things have moved on from that office.
Thank God.
Somewhat. Yeah, thank God. How has that journey been for you? Like, did you even see this as was starting a record label ever the path?
It wasn't really the sort of design. I think starting in a kind of writing background, what was great about it was that I met a lot of people. I went to a load of amazing shows. I had all these personal experiences that were great. I was also able to sort of enlist a lot of young writers that went on to do great writing and journalism full time, which was an amazing thing. So that was a great springboard. I started putting on club nights. But even amongst doing all those things in the early days, I wasn't really thinking about a label. But it was at one of the club nights where I was putting on this show with Block Party, one of their first gigs when they were unsigned. And Kelly, the singer, basically at soundcheck, he said, "You should meet the person I'm going to university with at the moment. His name's Tim. He's putting out our debut single." And that was when I was introduced to Tim Dello by Kelly. And Tim and I just got on like a house on fire during that sound check. And it was really funny because I was trying to get the Block Party 7-inch for free for him. And he was trying to get into the club night for free. And we ended up doing a trade. I got a 7-inch and he got him for free. And then we were like, why don't we do something together? And then 3 weeks later, we sat down for a pint. And that's when we decided to start Transgressive. And So it was genuinely started out of sort of sheer DIY fandom and no money. Like, we had some contacts that were built through the website and the club nights, but it was a quite naive pursuit, to be honest.
Is there something there's something so beautifully human about that? I do something for you, you do something for me. There's a real like tactile in real life. This person introduces you to this person. Do you think there's a little bit of that that's sort of missing now in an age of social media, where people aren't necessarily going to, like, you're not bumping into people at a gig and it's like, oh, you like the same thing I like, and let's start a band and let's do this. It's like,
yeah, I think it's an interesting point. I think it feels like we went from that extreme where maybe people didn't have enough information to now we've got a super abundance of information. And back then it was definitely, I would say, quite a closed door to get into the music industry. Whether you were an artist or a musician or someone wanting to start a label or whatever, it definitely felt like you had to like overprove yourself, often underpaid for a long time, which is very problematic as well. And then just basically work your way up the ladder, as it were. Whereas now I think maybe it's like less, even though there's more information and insight on how to do it and ways to do it, I think maybe it's such a mass that people don't know where to begin. Whereas I think, I guess if you start incrementally at the start, which is, I'm going to just start meeting people, I'm going to put some nights on, I'm going to then maybe do more nights if they do well, I'm then going to maybe put a record out. There was that clarity to it, know, and so it is hard to imagine how maybe people would have that clear sort of way to grow, I guess.
Yeah, you can't just do it and then eventually something happens. It's just like,
yeah, I mean, unless the flip to that is, I guess, creator culture. I mean, maybe you can sort of like kind of do conversations like these and then start leveraging respective audiences online and then building it in that way. But I don't know, I guess I'm a bit old school in that I like having a piece of vinyl and I like being in a room with people, and those things to me still feel absolutely ethereal and special,
and like in my experience as well, essential to music. Do you think, I mean, so it's definitely changed from like vinyl, for example, even though vinyl actually somehow now is still, didn't it just like have a $1 billion year last year?
Yeah, it's like, it's kind of the biggest it's been sort of since the 90s.
Yeah, it's just kind of like, what the hell? But then at the same time, like streaming, etc., is like also sort of massive. How have you seen the change of how music is interacted with affect artists?
I think it's really complex because in some instances we've had some artists we work with, whether that's Flume or a band like Two Door Cinema Club, who we've published in the past. Lots of artists where streaming has been gigantic and global and has seen them reach multiple generations of different audiences. Equally, there are some artists where maybe their work, for whatever reason, the sort of, whether it's algorithmic or zeitgeist driven, maybe their work doesn't initially hit as hard in the streaming ecosystem. So for those artists, it might well be you see them at festivals, you see them tour, and you see their records in old-fashioned stalls or whatever. And they find their audiences that way. But I guess our job now as a label is to be a conduit and create every opportunity, no matter what artist you are, no matter what the discipline is, no matter how people want to listen to you. And that is complex, and I think most musicians and artists, in truth, probably just want to write music and play shows. And now they have to do a hell of a lot more. And then I think that doing a lot more is maybe not a bad thing, because the great artists before social media, whether it's Bowie or whomever you want to say, that is hands-on iconic.
Yeah.
A lot of those artists always were in control of lots of other facets, and now maybe the technology and the way people listen and consume things denotes that artists need to be even more far-reaching in their world building. You know? But I do also empathise with people that don't want to deal with any of that bullshit in their estimation and just do what they want to do.
I mean, I've had to engage with it. I am quite all right with being sort of in front of cameras and on, to have pictures taken, etc., which I think is kind of part of the job in many ways. But I also I have found myself sometimes reaching for that instead of reaching for creating something, say just like writing a song, etc. It's like, what can I post, as opposed to like and it's not necessarily always like in the most artful way. I'm just like, that change in like how you get validation, as opposed to like, oh, your record sales or people turning up to your gigs. It's like, oh, I can make music and get validation from never being in front of anyone ever. And it's such a just a different way, having like grown up in a very much a tactile world.
Yeah, well, I was just going to ask you on that point, like, you know, as someone that's sort of traversed the world that you were just describing and now doing that for you personally, you know, is it, have you like found yourself enjoying the new iteration of it, or is it something you're at odds with?
Both. I've found it as a new challenge, and I have seen, and I think I've also sometimes participated in times when it can actually be artistic.
Yeah.
So there are musicians out there who actually put out great quote unquote content.
Yeah.
Which is just it's just another element, like say like a classic like album campaign or whatever. You have, you know, your music video, but then you have other things like in your press pack and all this stuff. It's like, it's just another part of the story of the song.
Yeah.
So maybe the social media aspect of things is, you know, talking about the writing of the song.
Yeah.
Maybe it's like introducing people to it in a really fun, interesting way.
Yeah.
As opposed to just thinking about it as this is just some shit I have to do now.
Yeah.
Which I think a lot of musicians feel the pressure of, you know. And I found it really, really a cool problem to solve. But a lot of people, like you say, really are at odds with having to do that.
But this is it as well, though. I think, you know, I think a lot of people, if they don't want to play that game, fine, don't do it.
Yeah.
You know, and that's okay. You know,
Yeah.
like, and people can just. I'm starting to hear of people now that aren't putting songs out until they've like maybe sold out loads of shows, and that I quite like that. It's almost like the equivalent of not putting a single out physically until you've got a real folklore about what you're doing. And now some people are like, actually, rather than putting out like loads of EPs and singles, I'm just going to hold back and just play shows and get a reputation from word of mouth. And I love that.
Yeah.
You know, I think maybe frustratingly as well as empoweringly, there are no rules.
Has the way that you've worked with artists, has that changed at all over the years that you've been in a...
I think it's a good question, because obviously the industry's changed totally, you know, and kind of always does every sort of few years. It's always kind of like shifting in terms of the way people listen to music and discover music. The way we deal with artists or anyone, frankly, it hasn't changed. No, we're you know, I mean, myself personally, but also everyone I work with, our companies and stuff, like, it's all about transparency and being upfront and, you know, being honest and having difficult conversations. Because the irony is, having direct, difficult conversations are actually way kinder than like avoidance or lying or manipulation, you know. So for us, like, just being as upfront as possible about where things are at and you know, like, kind of tackling difficult topics. But also, that's on that side of it. The other end of it is also, there's a lot of fun atmosphere as well, you know. Like, I mean, when you're fortunate to be having an amazing record, an amazing artist and an amazing team, you find yourself in loads of incredible scenarios a lot of the time, you know. And at any one time, we're making records all over the world with different amazing people, and some of the conversations you have are just absolutely ranging from hilarious to surreal to ambitious to technical to abstract, and these conversations, many of them philosophical, are the best bit of the job, to be honest, you know.
Is that like, so would you, I mean, it sounds like you're describing a cool community. Like,
Yeah.
how much has that been a factor of your longevity in the industry?
It's all so hard to say this without being really schmaltzy, but it's only about community for me personally. It's like, it's only about relationships, people, support, chasing dreams. It's not about anything else. The rest of it for me is machinations and business models that I have to get my head around, but that's not what I'm driven by, you know, personally.
Is that hard to marry the two? Because again, like I say,
it's a goddamn nightmare.
You're such a people person, but you also are a business person. You're a record label executive. It's like like having those like beautiful connections with people, as well as wearing that hat. Like, how's that been sitting with you the whole time?
I think the reason I can deal with it is that I take the responsibility. It's like, you can't start any business or company or sign any contract with an artist or whomever and not endeavour to honour that really faithfully. So I've got no problem with the concept of that. I think it's just about drive and motivation. I'm not driven to be a music industry executive or professional, whatever term and things. It's almost like a byproduct of trying to create ways of support, really. You know, if you start a label or a publishing or management company, or the things that we do, and we also, as I say, still put on shows and we film events and make documentaries and stuff. The whole essence of it is about propelling love and support for artists that we believe in. vision. That is the core of it. Then the rest of it, the technical side, whether it's finance and commercial or contracts, those are there just to facilitate agreements and commitments that we endeavour to make, really. But really, I've learned about those in order to do the things that I care about.
That's fair. But I love that, and I like hearing you talk about supporting the artist. But how about yourself? Like, where do you find support? Do you find, say, on your side of the stage, is there much? Do you feel like there's much support for people in your position? And do you feel like there are people banding together to like look after each other and like help each other through tough times and deal with things?
It's a really good question. I think not formally. I think the music industry is remarkable because it's lots and lots of UFOs and islands. There's just loads of small companies. Whether you're a session musician or an artist or a band, or the management company or the label or the independent label or the publisher or the collection society, or the promoter, there are so many different like kind of people in the constellation of it as an industry. And I think the positive about that is you've got a lot of dynamism and a lot of like brazen, brave, progressive thought and ideology. The downside is there isn't much through line and unity. Like often there's a lot of competition between artists, between labels, which is ironic. It's like we should all be in this incredibly warm, uplifting, spiritually rejuvenating thing together. But often what happens is actually quite brutal. And in that regard, I think what's challenging is I think maybe there isn't as much transparency about when things are tough in the business or when things are, like individually challenging. And so for me,
like you have to put on like everything's cool.
I think,
regardless.
I think that is one of the biggest industry challenges is that everyone's fronting. And here's the irony about that as well. You kind of also need that because if you're an artist, you're projecting and creating an image, and that's something that is aspirational. It's escapist. It's beautiful. It's an extension of your artistry. So not having that element of imagination and dreaming would also be hampering the vision. So the very thing that's required is also the thing that can also unfortunately mean that people are putting up a facade about how they're really dealing with things. And I guess what I've learned to do, for better or worse, I'm just who I am and I'm going to be open with everyone. So the way I get support personally is that there are a lot of people that I respect in record labels, management companies, and whenever I sit down with them and have chats like I'm having with you, it's just this. It's like I'll just literally ask really direct questions. It's not about politics or fact finding. It's just about connecting, and that's all that matters to me personally.
Before we move on, a quick shout out to Music Minds Matter for making this whole podcast possible. Music Minds Matter is there to offer help and support for anyone working in the music industry at any point in their career with things like free helpline, free online resources, and practical well-being tips. So please get involved, go online, reach out to Music Minds Matter. We are here to help. And back to the episode. I love that. So it's ultimately it's connection. Would you say, do you have a mentor? Have you had mentors in the industry?
You know what, we've been very fortunate that over the years there have been a number of people that have crossed our paths where they may not have been consistent people, but there's a word of advice here or there's regular lunches here. And off the top of my head, in the very early days when I started as a writer, Steve Lamack, I sent an email to him saying I wanted to get into music, I wanted to be a journalist, I was looking into him as an influence in the writing. He sent me this amazing email that I remember, I think I was 14, and he said, you don't have to shout the loudest to be heard.
Oh, nice.
And that really helped me at a point where I was no doubt overeager and impatient and hadn't really produced anything of any merit, but was probably feeling delusionally entitled to some kind of level of involvement in the music business because I was so keen. And that tempered me in a helpful way. On the film side, I did work experience when I was 16 at Radio X. It was called XFM then, and so that was amazing. I just sort of interviewed the Strokes and ruined most of my GCSEs by being hungover with bands underage. Sorry, but that's just it was a different time.
No, don't do that.
Don't do that. I genuinely don't recommend that. But like basically I then that summer I did work experience, and it was an amazing time at XFM as it was Dermot O'Leary, Ricky Gervais and Zane Lowe who was doing the drive time show, and Zane very kindly said to me, he said like if you ever want to do anything in like kind of media or anything, let me know. And then I made a sort of TV show pilot a couple of years later when I was 18, and I sent it to Zane, and off the back of that, a series of events happened. I ended up making a TV show for MTV when I was 19, the same year that I started Transgressive. So people like Steve Lamacq, Zane Lowe, Claire Sturgis, who was at XFM, Jim Benner, who was at XFM, Seymour Stein, the late great Seymour Stein, who started Seye Records, he sat me and Tim down and gave us a 4-hour session in New York of like, here's how to do an indie label.
Amazing.
Which obviously, you know, given that he signed everyone from Ramones to Madonna to Talking Heads, that's the guy to listen to.
Yeah.
Calder Marshall as well, who was one of the first supporters of the label as well. I mean, the list does go on, but those people, Jeff Travis, Alan McGee, all those people in the early days were very supportive.
So that's beautiful. You've had quite a few people. Do you find yourself now in that position where, you know, obviously you're a tenured
I'm old.
Yeah now that you're up,
it happens to everyone.
Because I find myself, so, you know, I get DMs every day about people asking for advice, and then I look back, I'm like, what are you talking about asking me for advice? And then I look back, it's like, oh, I've been doing this for 20 years as a job, and it's just like, there's a weird responsibility that comes with that.
Absolutely.
What do you find yourself saying, or do you find yourself just trying to be a good influence, just to be around? Or do people ask you questions formally and you sit them down and you give them advice? Like, how do you find being in that role now for other people?
I do agree. I think it is a responsibility. I think if I've been lucky enough to both crave advice and then also receive advice, I think it would be absolutely weird and selfish to like hoard information all the time. Obviously the challenge is always is like, you've got your day work that you need to do, you've got family responsibilities, potentially you've got other things that contend with that extra effort, but it is absolutely beyond fulfilling to see that there are just new people coming through all the time, and being able to exchange ideas and energy. It's not like kind of giving something away, you're getting by giving that support to people, and you know, the belief in the concept of music and good people working in music. You know, you've got to like walk the walk if you want that to happen, you know. But yeah, I do sort of where possible, I try and get back to most people. Sometimes I'm very slow because there are other priorities that I have to sort of deal with, like in front of me professionally, but like I always endeavour to try and sit down with people or have a Zoom or answer a few key questions. And sometimes when I see people, and it's like really it's part of life, and I think it's, you know, I feel so grateful that it happened to me, so I hope I can do the same, you know.
So you did list some really, really great advice that you got. What's some terrible advice that you've gotten?
Oh my God. Well, I mean,
or what would be terrible advice for someone listening?
I think always trust your instincts. That's a cliche, because for example, like in the early days of basically being up for just doing most things and not being paid, the amount of times people would be like, oh cool, so you know, like well you're in with all these young bands, I'll give you 50 quid for every band you find. That happened quite a lot of people that are trying to get cheap scouts or trying to get people like kind of in that sort of way. That still happens, I believe. So I think people should be careful and make sure that they've got a plan for their involvement with people. They're not just sort of taking more than they should, sort of thing. But I was very lucky that I had the instincts to kind of go, this doesn't feel right, in a few of those instances. But no, I think bad advice. Oh, that's a really funny question, isn't it?
Yeah, no, it's like I've seen it a few times in a few different instances, but like one of the worst pieces of advice, people say like, don't ever change, and it's just like, no, you constantly change.
Definitely.
like you should, if you're growing. Like I look back and cringe at some things that I've done in my life. I'm just like, that's good. It's just like, especially in sobriety now, I look back at some of the madness I was doing. Like, thank God I changed. You know what I mean?
Actually, I mean, speaking of sobriety, I mean, you know, I don't want to say this in like a kind of like sort of big way, but yeah, I never got into like hard drugs and stuff, you know.
Judgment, but it is pretty sound advice to like stay away from madness, you know. Yeah,
I think it's okay to be near madness, but I think to get,
which you will be doing music.
Totally,
you just will be.
Yeah, exactly, and that maybe that's the hit in itself, is just being around the carnival of, you know, big personalities and ideas. But yeah, just keep it at bay, I would say.
Yeah, how have you found like having a family as well, like, and being so busy?
I would say that's the grounding element. I would also say it's very challenging because obviously you've got that is just its own set of like complexities, especially when we've got small children, which my wife and I now do. It's honestly the best thing in the world. It's like been incredible. But sort of like doing after parties and then getting up at like 5 or 6 in the morning, or like broken nights and stuff, they're not amazingly conducive. But it's all a moment in time as well. Like kids aren't small forever, so you just got to make sure that you get the balance between having the sort of celebratory glass after a great gig or festival, and then also making sure you're home and you're going to watch the school play. It's that's the world I'm now in, sort of working out that balance, and I'm sure I'll definitely mess it up a few times, but I'm trying to do my best with it.
I think we spoke just before the cameras were rolling about how this we were speaking very briefly about someone who's kind of stopped doing music and they become a French teacher, and how like that sounds, sometimes you think about that, it's like a sensible thing to do, but how this job, even though for all its like madness and all its quirks and how much it demands from you, I think you said it's like it gives as much as it can take, and sometimes it takes more. Obviously that it's a dream job for most people. What would you say are some of the things that people don't expect from this job? Like, what would you say is something that people don't think is a part of your life that actually is?
I think it's an iceberg. Like, you see the top, you don't see the depths of it. And, and what I mean tangibly is that if you're a musician or aspiring musician, you might see the 90 minutes on stage. You won't see the load in. You won't see the sound check. You won't see the months of rehearsals. You won't see the hours on top of that in a bedroom where every musician's doing their thing. You won't think about all of the load in for the crew, the assembly of the stage. It's just like there's so much behind the beauty, the creation of a record or a show or a festival. And I think if people want to work full-time in music, obviously it's a privilege. Obviously, because it's such a privilege, there's a huge load of people that want to do the same thing. It's like anything. If you want to be a world-class athlete, you probably have to do a few extra hours on the court, don't you?
Yeah.
And I think if people are willing to put the time in, the rewards will be there. But one thing I would say is maybe the danger of the modern digital world we live in is the fact we can all see each other's lifestyles and all see each other's jobs now. It could be misleading that because you can see it, you can access it quickly.
Yeah.
But I would argue that actually, like anything, I still believe that, the 10,000 hours, maybe even 20,000 hours is the way to go.
Yeah. Especially if like everyone else kind of has access to the same information that you do.
Yeah.
It's just like, if you're not, there's putting in maybe 20,000 hours, but there's also, I'm a big believer in what else do you bring to music? It's like, I'm not, I can really play, but like, I'm not necessarily in Gorillaz band and in all these other bands because I'm the best bass player in the world. It's like,
agree to disagree there.
I mean, fair enough. That's why I asked you here. But what else can you bring to, I bring like a good attitude. I bring being on time. I bring being reliable. I actually do bring, I think a social media presence as well. I think is actually kind of some ways is an employable skill.
Yeah, definitely.
It's good to have in your CV. It's like all these other things that come to it. What would you say are some qualities that are good to keep your well-being up and to keep your mind right in this job that people may not see or people may not expect? Like, what's some good advice for someone who wants longevity in the music industry?
I do 20 minutes of exercise every morning. I'm not a religious person. That is the only religion I have, and the cruel joke of this is that I don't do that solely for physical prowess. It's pure, it is genuinely for my mental health. Like, I can't tell you, every morning, no matter what the day is going to do, I've done something for myself, for my being, for my temple, and I know that I'm going to get to the end of the day knowing that whatever ups, downs, sideways kicks, I did something that kept me healthy in some regard. And I can tell you as well, like, it's so cheesy and embarrassing to talk about it, but whatever, we're here. It's a podcast. The dopamine hit and the endorphins that you get at the beginning of the day, if you do it before you've had breakfast and you're already there, you're just starting the day positively every day. And I have to say, if you've got a life that's complicated in terms of tasks and trying to focus on paying the bills right, right now, and you've got family as well. If you can get that time, it makes you better at everything else, you know.
Such a good idea. I've tried in the morning. I hate working out in the morning, but I've tried every morning after making my bed to do some press ups. Like, no matter how many I can do, it's like in 5 minutes, like whatever. It could be 4 that day. It could be 15. There's something about just doing something for yourself at the top of the day. As well as making your bed. It's like that is such a good way to put things on your terms, no matter, because the day is going to happen to you.
Yes, it is.
Like, but what can you do? How can you affect the day to start things off?
It will make you feel better, and also for me personally, like, because the working week is so busy and the weekends are now so busy with wonderful but hectic family life. It's like the idea of going to the gym for like 2 or 3 hours a couple of times a week isn't actually practical for my schedule. So, but doing 20 minutes a day, you know, like ideally it'd be 30, 40 minutes a day, but that's unfortunately going to be too hard with the morning routine. But it's like that is enough just to keep the machine going. But that's what I personally do. But other than that, I think also talking with friends and family openly, you know, about everything, you know, all the time, and not resorting. One thing I'd also say is don't use WhatsApp as a way to discuss or like catch up with people. That is not a phone call. That is not a meeting in person. And we're sort of thinking, oh, I've sent someone a few messages, tick that. And that is not nourishing interaction. And I'm not panning WhatsApp. We all use it for practical things. Use it for like basics. But honestly,
I feel a little bit seen actually. I do use that a little bit as a soft catch up.
This was a name and shame.
But
this is an intervention.
No, it's real, this podcast. I'm here for being seen like that. It's just like, you know what, because I do that, and I think the modern life, you know, you message someone and you think that's I've connected. It's just like, have you, or did you just
I think don't get me wrong, I don't want to be too sort of like kind of hardcore. It's like, a few messages with you know, that's fine, but like I think I'm talking more about friends, family, people that you're like feel really you should connect with. Just like pick up the phone or just like go for a coffee. It's like, especially now in the current world we're in, like, you know, again, if we're talking about fronting, I'm sure there's a lot of people that are fronting all the time about how they're dealing with things or how they feel about things that are going on. And I think the more we can just all be kind to each other and be in the room with people, the better. I think it's more important than it's ever been.
Hell yeah. Great words. When you look at the life you've built in music so far, what would you say you're most proud of?
Oh my goodness. I don't really sort of like look back that often. I'll just say a project that I've just been involved with, like, which was a charity project. I worked on the War Child Help 2 album. I was very kindly invited to be the A&R director on that project, and
it's a wonderful record.
Oh, I'm pleased you like it. I mean, I feel very mixed feelings about it, obviously, because, you know, War Child as a charity do such incredible work. It's just heartbreaking to consider how needed they are. You know, it's a charity that they themselves famously and regularly say shouldn't exist.
Don't want to exist,
and so by, you know, default that the album shouldn't exist as well. But here we are in the world we're in, and idealism aside, they are doing amazing, important work. And to be able to be invited to help assemble the second edition of that record, you know, the original album was so inspiring to me when I was a kid. Again, when I mentioned earlier, I was literally 10 when I bought it in cassette in High Wycombe when it came out when I was growing up, and it was a really important benchmark of like all the music I loved at the time and what was going on in, you know, Britpop and beyond. So to be able to like kind of be involved in assembling a new era's version of that was a real privilege, and I'm so pleased that it's been received well and seems to be making a lot of money for the charity as well.
Fabulous. So. Well, yeah, long may that continue. And finally, is there anything that still feels unfinished?
Oh my gosh. Well, the beauty of art and music is that it's infinite. You know, it outlives all of us. That's why we are addicted to it. You know, we are custodians in our transient bodies, our transient buildings, our transient ways of getting around. We're only here for a short time, but art and music are here forever. It's an unfinished, beautiful cosmic journey.
So lots more to come.
I hope so.
Hell yeah. Toby, thank you so much. I really appreciate you coming.
Pleasure, man. Thanks very much. It's been an honour.
Performance Piece, episode 2. If you've been affected by any of the topics discussed, or you feel like you're struggling, reach out to Music Minds Matter anytime confidentially on 0808 802 8008.